Queen Carvania stood haloed by the morning sun. An army hung on her every word.
My champions, I have sold my chariot on Carvana. 'Twas a lovely SUV, an inexplicably queenly offer. They're even coming to the castle to collect it. Tonight, we feast! An offer you can feast on. Sell your car today on Carvana. Pickup fees may apply.
Hello, friends in the Pacific Northwest. If you haven't come or are not planning to come to one of our live book events here in Vancouver, what are you doing with your calendar? We have questions. We kicked things off last night at Banyan Books and Sound, and my heart is so full. Huge shout out to Nathan, who flew in from Fort St. John with the most gorgeous handmade wooden cutting board with a little bit culty engraved into it. Who does that? Thank you, Nathan. We were so honored by that and all the support that we had last night. Thank you, Vancouver, for already making us feel so loved. But you still have 3 chances to come hang out with us. July 21st, casual book signing at Massey Books. July 23rd, another book signing, meet and greet at Indigo Park Royal in North Van. And finally, July 24th at the Canadian Memorial Centre for Peace's Great Hall. Listen, July 24th is a big one. It is our launch. It'll be our last Canadian event for a while, and we're turning it into a live, a little bit culty podcast, complete with an audience Q&A. So if you've ever wanted to be part of the conversation or ask us that question in person that you've been saving, this is your moment. Do not sleep on this one. This is a ticketed event. If you've already picked up a copy of the book, amazing. Just send us a proof of purchase and we'll send you a code for a free ticket because the tickets do include a copy of the book. If you're coming as a couple, you don't have to pay twice. Just DM us and we'll hook you up. Come and laugh, cry, ask questions, get your book signed, meet fellow cult survivors and cult curious, and all around lovely humans, including some of my friends and family who'll be there. It's going to be glorious. Honestly, we can't wait to see you or meet you, whatever the case may be. And if you're not in Vancouver, stay tuned for your local events and be in touch if you want us to come to your city. We'll figure something out. Thanks, everybody, for the support. And don't forget, also, the book is now on Audible, narrated by us. We are so proud of this and can't wait to share it with you. See y'all soon.
This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be considered legal, medical, or mental health advice. The views and opinions expressed do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of the podcast and are not intended to malign any religion, group, club, organization, business, individual, anyone, or anything.
I'm Sarah Edmondson.
And I'm Anthony Nippy Ames, and this is A Little Bit Culty.
We woke up from a cult, and that journey was captured in The Vow on HBO and in my memoir, Scarred.
Now, in this podcast, we break down the shame and secrets that make these experiences so destructive with honest conversations on how seemingly benign groups can cross into the cultiverse and how to spot and recover from trouble if it happens to you.
Each week, we bring in experts, survivors, and whistleblowers to explore red flags, resilience, and even share a few laughs, because sometimes you gotta laugh.
Subscribe to our Patreon for early and ad-free listening, some live Q&A, and exclusive content at patreon.com/a-little-bit-culty.
Welcome to Season 8 of A Little Bit Culty.
Welcome back to part 2, everybody, with Gillie Jenkinson.
If you want to hear her story in and out of a small Christian cult, please do listen to part 1, and part 2 will be, maybe that ice is really loud. Can we do that again? Sinner.
The post-sinning.
Sinner with the, Nippy definitely sins because this is why he never got to his stripes in Nexium, Gillie, because he was not only was a sinner, he was very disobedient.
I was connected to my authentic self.
Yeah,
he was,
which is somewhat of a sinner.
Yeah, absolutely. In that setting, it's fully breaking the rules.
Oh yeah.
Gosh.
He was really disobedient. I was like you, as a good
thank God
girl.
I was.
Yeah, thank God, because I had someone to talk to when I started to see the cracks. But enough about us. Amazing. We're going to focus back on you. So let's jump to, we don't need to, your history of how you learned everything is in the book, but let's just focus on so we can really glean some nuggets for our audience and encourage them to pick up this workbook if they're a survivor. It's such a great resource.
I was looking at it yesterday. I was like, wow, this is vast.
This is robust. So okay, so you, just to summarize, you realize that there's nothing in this space. You your own counseling. When did you can you give us a moment of like when you really started to put the cult pieces together and how that, what's the word? Facilitated this book. Like how did it all come together for you? And what were your individual resources? Was it ICSA or Lifton?
So it was a lot of things. I was in the cult for 7 years and we were still involved with churches for 14 years and I hadn't got the cult out of my head. And then we left a church that we went to locally because it was really becoming controlling and culty again. So I thought, that's it, I'm out. And at that point, I looked for therapy and there were no trained therapists. And of course, there were very fewer trained therapists back in the mid-90s than there are even now. And there was nothing. And so I thought, actually, I need help, but I'm going to train as a counsellor myself and provide help to people who leave these settings. Now, I know there are lots of people who do that, but, this was way back. And we did find an exit counsellor who helped us to begin to understand some of the elements of what is a cult and was quite helpful in some ways, but was very unethical in other ways. And I mean that in a therapy sense, not in loaded language, because I know Nexium went on about ethical, but I don't mean it in that sense. I mean it, that a therapist who has a code of ethics, who actually adheres to a code of ethics, who treats clients, respectfully and well and has good boundaries. So he didn't have those. And so I thought I've got to try and bring together the cult understanding of what is a cult and that sort of exit counselling element and then the ethical therapy together. But the first thing I did was I just trained. I went and I trained as a pastoral counsellor, actually, because I was still so involved in the church that I couldn't do a secular training. But that secular training was part of my exiting because I was actually with very sane Christians and Christians who made me think for myself and really challenge some of the weird ideas that I brought with me from the cult. Like you do 3 hours of counselling in one go. That's normal, and they're like, no, that's not normal. And lots of other things. So that was, and at the very end of that diploma in pastoral counselling, I started to plug into what was happening at the time. And I heard about the ICSA, International Cultic Studies Association conference in 1998 in Chicago. And somebody on my course actually said to me, don't you think it's time that you start to engage with helping cult members? Because I had decided not to just to train as a therapist, just to get knowledge, get understanding of working with depression or mental illness or whatever. And I did that. And so I went to the 1998 ICSA conference and it was such an adventure. It was so exciting and terrifying to go. I went on my own. I left my young children at home and with Tony, and I met Dr. Paul Martin, who was the founder and director of Wellspring Retreat Center. And I heard him speaking, and he spoke with real passion and anger about the way the churches thought that people being converted was the answer to the cult problem. And I was still so under this stuff. I was still exiting, really, and trying to find my way to myself, and actually couldn't believe it to hear somebody speaking so clearly about this and about church. And he was always a believer. He was never a non-Christian. He was a believer, but he still spoke against what they were doing. And so I didn't meet him, I don't think, at the conference, but when I completed my dissertation for my pastoral counselling diploma it was, I contacted Wellspring and I said, I've written this dissertation, and I maybe I sent it to them actually, and I said I would like to be an intern And so in 1999, I went with my younger daughter, who was 10 then, and I went to, I think she was 10, and I went to Wellspring for a month, and it was in the foothills of the Appalachians in Ohio. I don't know if you guys know about Wellspring.
I'm aware of it, but I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know
I've heard
much about what they teach. I'm just aware that because it's still going, isn't it? Or no?
It's not going because Paul Martin died actually quite a number of years ago, which is a very big loss to those of us who knew him. He was one of the big kind of founders of this field. And it was a mental health facility for former cult members. And they'd go there for maybe 2 weeks, maybe a month. Someone I spoke with when I did my doctoral research had been there 6 weeks. It was a mental health facility. He was a psychologist, and they did research as well alongside the University of Athens. But clients would go there and they'd have like 2 hours of therapy with Dr. Paul Martin or Dr. Ron Burks in the mornings. And then in the afternoon, they'd have psychoeducational sessions with Larry Pyle. And they'd watch videos. Now, of course, you'd watch YouTube, but they were actually video cassettes. It was so long ago, which I have hundreds of upstairs. And then, so the clients would have one-to-one therapy, and then they'd have this time with Larry Pyle looking at psychoeducational stuff, looking at all sorts. And I was able to shadow the counselling time with the two therapists and then join in with the clients and see how Larry Pyle worked with them. And they called it the thought reform model. So they modelled everything they were doing around Lifton and Lifton's 8 components of thought reform. And he said to me, if you want to work in this field, you need to get to know Lifton. Make it your Bible, he said. And I learned so much in that time. I wrote this, I kept a journal, which is up on my shelf, in detail of what I was learning. I came back and so I'd been seeing clients. I worked at a rape crisis center as a volunteer, and then I got a job there. I got paid work, and I worked there for 11 years. And I really got to know about working with trauma and that kind of trauma. And then I did a master's in Gestalt psychotherapy. And I got that in 2005, I think. So after the diploma, I had a couple of years practicing as a therapist. And then I started to work using Gestalt psychotherapy. And that was 4 years, sort of intensive group training. And I needed to do a group training to heal some of the group triggers and things, because I didn't want to carry that into my therapy work. I wanted to kind of heal. And then I went back to Wellspring in 2008, and I was there again, I think it was 2 weeks this time. And I worked under Paul Martin as a supervisor with a family who'd come for the 2 weeks. So I really gained so much training through that. And through these years, I was also attending ICSA conferences because there was no training for this work. There was nowhere to go to train. And Paul Martin became a mentor, but he died in 2009. He was obviously not well when I was there. He was very depleted, and then he had leukemia and then pneumonia. It was such a tragedy to lose him. He was only 62. It's like, wow, I've lived.
He still had a life.
He still had a life, and he got taken way too early. But
how lucky you were that you got to work so close under him. Would you say a lot of that is in the book? Like a lot of your training there made it into the book?
I would say it's in the foundations of the book. It's not overtly there. And I've acknowledged him in the acknowledgements.
So I was going to ask, just in working with most people, what are the consistent through lines that you noticed in working with people in coercive control and in those dynamics? What were the challenges? What are the things that you learned were always going to be something you had to get people through?
Thought reform. They need to understand thought reform. I don't know if I'm understanding your question.
Well, what I'm hearing is once they start to understand thought reform, they start to understand what happened to them, and then that's the self-discovery, I guess, that they were going. Yeah. Okay.
Yes, but there are other elements. But, I went on and did the Masters. I did research and asked 8 former cult members, what do you think helps former members recover? And then I did my PhD and I asked 29 former cult members, what do you think helps former members recover? So from Wellspring, which was the foundation, and ICSA, and attending the conferences and learning from other people and their research and working with clients, of course, having clients throughout this time and learning from them what helps, what doesn't help, what's going to be useful, how can the therapy be made really useful. And actually at one time, so it's evolved the Walking Free, the book has evolved because when I got back from Wellspring, they used to give people separate sheets. So they had the thought reform definitions and then space underneath and write in how you think this applies to your story. And so they gave me everything. They just said that you can have them, use them, which was so generous. And I brought them back. And then eventually I have a filing cabinet in my room and I had like 32 areas and growing of subjects that former members were finding useful and that I found myself pulling out time and time again. And then I had this aha moment, which was, why don't you just stick it into a folder? So have a folder with the key worksheets in it. And that became what I called a recovery workbook. And I started then to print that recovery workbook. And then when clients wanted to see me for the counselling, post-cult counselling, I called it, then we would go through that workbook, which was the psychoeducational element that was needed. And then out of that, then to answer your question is how Walking Free, the book, I thought people would ask me for the workbook. They say, could just somebody, you might contact me by email and say, I've heard you use a workbook, please could I have a copy? And I was like, well, you can't really because it's the bare bones. It doesn't explain anything. You need the therapist there to explain it. So I wrote Walking Free with my voice in there of kind of what I would say in a session, if you see what I mean. Plus the first chapters are how to use the book, but then the milestones are the things we would cover in the recovery work.
It's brilliant because
meticulous.
Yeah, it's very meticulous and it's brilliant because you can't help everybody. And this is a great way to sort of duplicate as best as you can some of the lessons you've learned and the things that people can do on their own. And obviously, being with a therapist is better, but maybe not obviously. Some people, like, we probably know this, and I think this is in our new book. For us coming out of NXIVM, therapy was difficult because therapists would ask questions like, well, what do you mean by that? Or that, which is very NXIVM-ish. I mean, it's therapy, but like we use those terminologies.
Judged.
And a lot of people that we know that were in NXIVM couldn't even go to therapy because they were so triggered if their therapist wasn't cult informed or didn't know that we were doing therapy in NXIVM. So a lot of normal therapy questions were just like, fuck off, you don't ask me about that. So this type of workbook might be really good for somebody who doesn't want to see a therapist as well.
Yeah.
Or can't afford it.
And I've gone on and trained other therapists who also use the recovery workbook, but some of them have told me that often what they do is they use the recovery workbook with the client, and then the client goes off and reads one of the milestones within Walking Free, the published book. So they get a bit more information. Some of the therapists are using Walking Free with the client. So you can use it in different ways. It can be a self-help book just for the client, just for somebody to use. And people have done that. And then it can be used alongside therapy.
Yeah. I mean, just the questions it asks and elicits are valuable in of itself.
Are they? Good. I'm glad you think so. I was really curious as to what you would think because honestly, listening to The Vow and thinking it's a therapy cult, how triggering must therapy be? Look, I've worked with people who've been in therapy cults, and I've had to be very careful. The loaded language is so similar, and the vibe of it, isn't it? It's like therapist's kind of vibe, and that
it's case by case for sure. I found for me with therapy, it was like I've answered this question already.
Oh,
a lot of it felt redundant, and I felt like I don't need to ask myself.
You're a sinner. You're a sinner.
Yeah,
though,
I'm a sinner. I'm a sinner. And I'm like, look, you can't ask a sinner these questions. So it felt just.
You're not a compliant person.
No. Before we hear from our sponsors, just a quick reminder. Our book, A Little Bit Culty, Navigating Cults, Control, and Coercion, is officially out and available on Amazon.
Signed pre-orders have closed, but you can still get your copy today. This book is the culmination of 5 years of conversations, interviews, and research. Everything we've learned about how people get pulled into high-control groups and how to avoid, escape, or heal from them.
If you've been listening to the podcast and want a deeper go-to resource, this is it.
Available now on Amazon in print and as an ebook for Kindle. And yes, the audiobook is coming soon, narrated by us.
Just search A Little Bit Culty and grab your copy. Do it.
Thanks, everybody. This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. We are shockingly good at talking about mental health these days. Podcasts, group chats, and that one friend who's basically become a therapy evangelist. Everybody's got one. BetterHelp's 2026 State of Stigma report surveyed 2,000 Americans that revealed that 85% of Americans believe getting support is wise, yet 74% say society discourages people from doing so. We nod along. We agree wholeheartedly. We say things like therapy's so important while sipping coffee like we're very enlightened. Then someone suggests we go to therapy and suddenly we're too busy, or it's probably fine, or it'll work itself out. Or my personal favorite, I'll deal with it eventually. Eventually being a mythical time period that never arrives until you find yourself in a cult or a high control group or some other coercive situation. Been there, done that. BetterHelp's research confirms it. We believe in mental health support more than we actually seek it. We'll gladly diagnose our friends' entire lives, but somehow that same energy never turns inwards. Very on brand for us as a society. Here's the thing though, BetterHelp makes the eventually part to disappear. Fully licensed therapists in the US, strict code of conduct, and they do all the matching legwork with a quick questionnaire. 12 plus years of experience means they basically nail it on the first try. Didn't click? You can switch anytime. No awkward breakup conversation required. So maybe it's time to take your own advice instead of just doling it out for free like some unlicensed guru. Don't let stigma stand in the way of support. Start therapy with BetterHelp. Sign up and get 10% off at betterhelp.com/culty. That's betterhelp.com/culty. Thank you, sponsors. We couldn't do it without you. Now let's get back to the show.
I'd also say that there's, like, I remember being in NXIVM, and at one point I went to couples counseling with the guy that I was with at the time, like when I started NXIVM. And so I was still in NXIVM. I went to couples counseling because we were having some relationship issues. And I remember thinking, like, the therapist asked something or said something, it was something about love, and like was saying, so I hear him saying that he doesn't feel something like about love. And I was like, I felt like I knew more than the therapist because I'd been doing this train. I was like, we haven't even unpacked what love is. Love is a loaded word. Like, what do you mean by love? And like, I was just like, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. So we didn't have a lot of respect also for therapists because we believed that this work was deeper and better. And that's taken some time to unwind. You know, I have great respect now for therapists, but
Well, not all therapists get it
Not
right.
all therapists. Yeah, exactly. I was going to say that because...
No, I was just going to say, in terms of, and you've alluded to this, for former members trying to find therapy, it can be, and I hear it so often, it can be really problematic. The therapist can become voyeuristic or kind of, ooh, a cult, that's really interesting. And you're like, I'm not here to educate you on cults, which is why I ended up doing the training as well. I just thought if somebody's interested, and they have been, so, if someone isn't interested, I'll retire. That's fine. I'm of an age.
What's the main sort of like misconception? If a therapist doesn't have your background, they've never been in a cult, maybe they've watched some documentaries or not, but like what's the main thing that therapists don't understand that you wish they'd understand if they're helping someone out of a cult or spiritual abuse or whatever?
That there's a couple of things, that the level of control is probably way outside their experience or their mental training, their knowledge. And that, and I'm interested in what you think about this, that in order to be a member of such a high control group, you have to change. You have to become the person they want you to be. I've called it the cult pseudo-identity or an introjected identity.
That was one of my notes. I was hoping you'd expand on that a little bit. The pseudo-identity and what was the other note I made about from your book? Introject. Yeah, it's a term I hadn't heard before. I heard pseudo-identity, but not introject. Can we riff on those two things a bit?
So so again, this came out of my master's research. So look, NXIVM goes on and on about being scientific. So I'm very cautious about every single thing I say. I'm thinking, my God, there's minefields everywhere. But what I'm saying is I put the work in to see what other people had to say, which you've done through your podcast. Like, this is research. You're interviewing people, you're finding out about how other people experience things. It was a similar vibe, really. And one of the data sets that came out of the masters was the need to get rid of the pseudo-identity or the cultic identity, whatever you want to call it. And that I started to really think about that. And I wrote a paper for ICSA on what is the cult pseudo-identity, or I called it personality then, but what is the cult pseudo-personality and how does it form? It's like, what is it? And how does it even get there? What's the process that happens? And I looked at some psychological theories about, is it just adaptation? Are we just adapting to this high control situation? Is it the development of a false self? Are we creating a false self or a mask to fit in? Or is it dissociation? Is it a trauma response that we're sort of dissociating and becoming this different person? And using Gestalt theory very specifically, I realized and felt that actually it wasn't any of those three, that it was actually an introjected personality or identity. And an introject is a belief or behavior that we take into ourselves, almost like we swallow it whole without chewing it over. So it's like swallowing a piece of beef and it just sits in our gut and it causes discomfort, but we can't get rid of it. We can't get it out of our system. And so it's poisoning us in effect. So an introject can be loaded language. It can be, well, I'm a sinner. That would be an introject within a cultic setting. All sorts. I mean, I was looking at your first chapter of Scarred and thinking, what sort of, and I hope this isn't triggering for you, but just
please.
The term, the term
Jump
entitled
yes.
is loaded language. Whatever that means within that setting, but it has a general meaning and then it has a very powerful meaning within that setting. Super powerful. Yeah. And so
don't worry about triggering me now. Ask anything.
No, thanks. So I'm interested. What does entitled mean in it for you in that setting?
So in that setting, and this came later with the jeunesse curriculum, with the sort of the traits of women that were the most abhorrent. So in the jeunesse and the SOP curriculum, it was like it was under the guise of like, let's understand men's wiring, let's understand women's wiring and programs and tendencies so we can figure out like how to evolve and help each other be more whole. Like, you know, men are protectors and they're consistent with their emotions and they have more character. Women are more emotional and we are more, and like there was the good and the bad of both. But when you hone in on the bad parts of women were that we were princesses in a bubble and we had no real understanding of how the world worked and we were just entitled for things to come to us and to be taken care of and protected.
I see.
Yes, that exists, right? Like, of course, there are some women like that, but to say that women are that,
it's emphasizing broad objectification traits of people and making them the norm, and pathologizing them, and then creating an atmosphere where that's all we saw with each other. Like they would see those traits with us. It isn't to say that like all women did that and men didn't do that, but that's ultimately where it leads when you pathologize those things.
To the point where I would be irritated with other women. And like there were certain terms that would come up, entitled, oblivious. Like if a woman was standing in a doorway and like talking to someone and people were trying to get by, I'd be like, fucking oblivious women, not aware. Like
However, women do stand in doorways. It's fucking bizarre. It is bizarre. If there's one thing I'm taking from that jeunesse training and I'm sticking to, women stand in doorways.
And men can't multitask.
And I will disagree with that.
Stereotyping left, right, and centre. So the point about the introject is when we are told you are entitled, we take on that identity. I'm just an entitled, spoilt princess of a woman. I need the men to protect me or whatever. So we swallow it whole within that setting. If we have critical thinking or if we have some rebellion, if I use that term, which is also loaded language for lots of people, then we might push back on it. But if we swallow whole the idea that I'm entitled, it starts to build a sense of identity. It starts to overlay the person we authentically are. And so we start to, and that's just one tiny piece of the jigsaw. It's like one tiny thing. The way we're treated, if somebody treats you, you know, as if you're not doing what you should do, or you're rebelling, or you're speaking up, then they're going to treat you in such a way you start to introject, you know, I'm a bad person. That sort of feeling. And that's what I mean by I hope it's clear, by the cultic pseudo-identity. And you see, some people think it's a dissociated part, that we dissociate. But I think dissociation is, say, it's a vertical split within our personality. And it's a trauma defense mechanism or survival response. To dissociate will save us. It'll help us. The pseudo-identity, I think, overlays. And I had a few clients who said it's like asphalt or tarmac overlaying a seed. It's like it starts to squeeze us and it starts to overlay us, and what should be organic and something that can grow and flourish gets squashed and squeezed under this pseudo-identity.
That feels very accurate.
Sense?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Does it?
Yeah. Yep, 100%. And my mom always recounts how, like, when I woke up very quickly, I didn't spend a lot of time humming and hawing. It's like it
was a cataclysmic, like,
you got
to move.
Yeah,
you got to move, and you don't have time to process anything, and we're in a fight. We're in a fight, like, right away. So it was like...
It's like as soon as I got the piece that Keith was having sex with people and that he wasn't who he said he was, it was like all the things...
All our suspicions were confirmed in a moment, and then we were in a fight in a moment, and we didn't have time to deal with our trauma, and we went from thinking we were helping the world become a better place one day to we need to take this down because this can't exist. and we've been aligned with something that is actually doing the opposite of what we thought we were doing.
Right.
All in about a 24 to 48 hour period.
That is massive.
It was massive. You know, it's super ironic, and I'm going to share this metaphor with you because I can tell you like metaphors, and maybe it'll help you also with your other clients. But it's ironic because, did you ever watch the movie The Sixth Sense?
Yeah.
Okay, so when we were training on how to explain to people what NXIVM was like, the metaphor that we were trained to use by Keith was, it's hard to explain this training because what it kind of feels like is you're watching The Sixth Sense and something's off and it's a bit scary. And at the end, you find out what? What do you find out about Bruce Willis? And then so I'd be asking you that he is what? What do we find out about Bruce?
He was dead, wasn't he?
Right. He's dead. And as soon as you find, that's the answer. Yeah. So you find out he's dead, and then
It's the aha moment.
That's the aha moment. And you go back and you recapitulate the whole movie. You go, that's why she wasn't talking to him. She wasn't mad. She couldn't see him. That's why this, that's why that. And that's what we used to explain what NXIVM was like, the Sixth Sense. But then we had, I think, because he was a sociopath, he enjoyed doing what he was doing to people, so you would never assume it was him. That's what it was like when we figured it out. Bruce Willis is dead. Keith Raniere is a sociopathic, sex-addicted, narcissistic con man. Holy fuck. And then we'd go back through all the things. That's why he never wanted us to redo the website. That's why he kiboshed my meeting with Lululemon so that we couldn't bring NXIVM there. That's why he
never would get himself in a conversation he couldn't curate. Like
that's why he had all those women around him. That wasn't his assistants. That was his harem. That's why it was like brrr,
yeah, so you're kind of rewriting history, like looking back and kind of experiencing it in a whole different perspective.
And seeing what his behavior was really abuse.
Yes. That he wasn't helping us. He was abusing us.
And enjoying it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's what I was thinking about with the introject, is like, when I picture that, it's like
sinning.
The meat that you were talking about, those things that we had ingested, like instantly we got rid of them and I was back to myself very quickly.
With trauma.
Amazing.
With trauma, but at the same time, there still pops up these thoughts, and leftover beliefs that are like, every now and then Nippy will say something, or I'll say something, and he'll say something, well, you don't really need that. And I'll be like, well, need is an interject. We weren't supposed to have needs outside survival.
Right.
Tell me, like, as an example, where would you direct someone in the book to root out the last little tentacles of beliefs?
So when I'm working with clients, we go through a whole worksheet specifically. So we go through one step at a time. And with introjects, I think it's really important to articulate them and then to challenge them. So I'm an entitled woman, needs challenging. It's like, but we also need to, like we've done, is understand the loaded language there. But we need to just becoming aware of an introject, which for Christians is, it's selfish to have holidays, which probably is true for many people who are on these cultic missions. So if I use that one, that it's selfish to have a break, even to have a rest, to have a holiday, that needs challenging, because honestly, I know people who burn out regularly because they still have that introject in their head.
Nippy's pointing to me under the table. I do. Nippy has to force me to rest. I don't rest easily.
But we have to rest. We have to. And it's one thing to make the choice that I'm not going to rest. I want to keep going. I'm happy to get exhausted. And it's another thing to be driven by an introject, which is still a belief or behavior that's still left over from the cult. It's a really important piece. It's a really important piece because it is a Gestalt term. When I do the training, I use this great quote, which I haven't got here, but this idea that an introject's like a foreign body, like a piece of meat sitting in our belly. It shouldn't be there. It needs to be digested. It needs to be eliminated. You know what I mean? poo it out, or we sick it out, or we get it out of our system, or we digest it, and it then becomes a part of our body. But it's a foreign body. These beliefs, these thoughts, these things, these behaviors don't belong to us. They're not ours. Whereas if we dissociate, we split in order to cope, and we can push something away and package it off so that it's not affecting us. And it's a brilliant psychological mechanism, but actually it can go past its sell-by date. There comes a point where we need to integrate. And with dissociation, we integrate. We bring the parts of ourselves together. But with the pseudo-identity, we don't want to integrate the shit the cult taught us. We want to chew it over and get rid of it. That's the sort of idea of it.
I have to tell you, I'm not triggered at all, but I'm remembering something from NXIVM, and I think that Nancy trained in Gestalt work.
She did.
Because
she mentioned it.
We used to do parts work, parts integration.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And, a part of me thinks that money's the root of all evil, but a part of me wants to make money, so that's a disintegration. Yeah. So they were always trying to integrate ourselves. And anytime you had a reaction, that was a disintegration. So that's it's even as I'm like thinking about my own therapy, I'm like, I want to get more. That's an being, what am I trying to say? Being integrated is also an introject for me.
Exactly. That's loaded language.
Yeah.
It's loaded language.
Yeah, because it was used against us.
You were in a therapy cult. Yeah. And this is the tricky thing about working with, therapy cults. And Gestalt has it's certainly been used by the cult. There's no doubt about it. But so has so many things.
Right.
And you used workbooks, and you used, what's my identity, and so many triggers for you. So it's incredible
values,
how you've come through it, ethics, value. I mean, honestly,
goals.
The number of goals, or the whole thing is baggage, probably, things that I use in the workbook even can be triggers. But I've tried to address that at the beginning in the 2 chapters of preparing for the journey, of actually saying, how can you do the book? What do you do if they're triggering? See, I think triggers can be problematic, but they can also be information, and they can be actually really helpful. If you're wanting to become more aware of yourself, and that's also going to be
portals.
Triggering for so many, they're ways of, sorry?
Yeah, I'm open to it. Like, I know some people who just went to one therapy session and said no. And I went and said, no, this has to be worked through, and it's just going to take some time. And that's actually one of the reasons why we wrote A Little Bit Culty. So we could give it to a therapist who didn't have your repertoire and didn't have your experience, and just get a bit of a cliff notes of all the things. But I
saw that.
I'm definitely open to it. I'm not closed down to it. I just sometimes
I'm done with therapy.
Yeah.
Nippy's done in general.
It's super challenging to go into therapy, whatever cult you've been in.
Even cult podcasts need sponsors. Check out these must-haves. Sponsor break's done. Back for more culty stories.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I feel like I don't think about it anymore. And It's not something I feel.
But our trauma is different.
Yeah.
Me and Nippy's trauma is different. Like, I got hurt physically, and that changes things. And
it does.
We have to remind ourselves of that. And
I was targeted differently. I was in a lot of ways left alone. So my trauma was wanting revenge.
Yeah. I mean, that seems like a healthy thing, to be honest. Using the workbook also has its triggers in it. Like, if you've been in Jehovah's Witnesses and you have to read endless Bible things or their Awake magazines or whatever, that can be triggering for people. But what we do in the therapy, when I do it, is we talk about it and we say, is there a way of moving through this? Otherwise, the cult's still controlling you in a sense.
We don't want that.
It's still got a hold. It usually works, and it can work really. Like, the therapists that I've trained, they use the model, and it's really effective. People are really helped by them.
I think I'm going to do it. I think I'm going to fill it out properly, Gillie, and I will.
Okay. Well, I'll be really interested to hear what you think about it.
I'm going to bring it to Vancouver this summer and do it.
People with political abuse, would you put that? That on there?
And anybody who's been, I've worked with people who've been in political cults.
Yeah.
I've worked with pretty well many of the major names. I don't list them on my website because I don't want to attract their attention. You can see I'm quite quiet about this. I mean, you didn't know what I do, and I'm probably too hesitant, really. I should contact people and say this is what I do, but, I just get on with it, and I know it's helpful, and if it isn't, then we stop the work.
Well, I feel like it's a healthy thing, and this is something that we've always struggled with, is like we got out, and we don't want to make the cult our life. We don't want to give it more of our time, and this is why we're not like traveling around the world promoting our book. Our kids come first. Baseball season comes first, and
we give this to 2 or 3 o'clock every day, and then we're parents for the rest of the day. And so I refuse to.
Lovely. That's really nice.
There's something else that's gonna.
But I do think that actually, I think it's worth spending the time. I'm not saying this to you particularly, but I think very often the cult comes back to bite people on the bum
100%
later.
Yeah, sure. If you don't process it.
And that it's actually worth doing the work if you can find the right person. Right now, I'm training therapists to use this model, Walking Free model, and the workbook, the book. And so I'm not taking on new clients, but my affiliates who are listed on my website are all survivors of some kind of coercive, cultic, spiritually abusive setting. They've all done the training, and I'm just training 13 people from the UK and 5 from New Zealand. So I'm really training therapists to work with this. And it's quite, trigger word, intensive training.
It's so great that you're doing that, but you have to, this is your legacy, and other people need to be out there doing what you've learned. And
I would give someone your book before ours if, I think ours is an understanding, a stopgap, but if someone's been deep, your book would certainly do like.
But they can work together. So.
They can work together.
Sure.
I feel like there's a Venn diagram of where they overlap in regards to healing. And there's things there's things in our book that we'd maybe give to somebody who wants to understand, who obviously wouldn't need this, but wants to understand.
Right?
That's
too much for them.
And we too much. And
that's homework.
And we'd maybe give our book.
And I got my version.
Right. You got your version. I really can't wait to hear what you think. But we'd also give it to somebody who's like on their way to college. We've got some friends with teenage kids, and we want them to read it before they go.
Yes,
right.
Good.
So they understand the red flags and the green flags, and that they could get out if they, you know what, this doesn't feel right. And I know, I remember from that book that if I feel pressured or shamed to do XYZ, that's might not be a cult, but it's a little bit culty, and I'm going to get out. Yeah. And I do think your book's amazing. I love the 4 phases and all the language and the recovery and the workbook and all the different things. And I am going to go through it because I think I do think that I have some leftover interjects that I want to, poop out, for lack of a better word. But
poop out.
Poop them out. And just to wrap up, some thoughts from you, since you have been in the space for so long. What do you like, what do you see now in the world? And like, well, first, 3 questions. One is, what is it like to see what we call like the golden age of cult awareness? So many documentaries, so many podcasts. What's that like for you, coming from a time when there was nothing?
I mean, it's great. I mean, watching some of the Netflix documentaries, they don't very often give the recovery element.
That's true.
I don't know if you know, I was filmed for a BBC documentary on a cult in England called the Jesus Army.
Oh, that's on our list.
And they filmed me.
Yeah. Yes.
Is it? They filmed me actually delivering therapy.
So great.
In that. They came to my house for 2.5 days, and then they'd use some of that footage because they wanted to put a recovery element in to bring some hope. So I'd be interested to hear what you think of it if you see it. I think it's great. I think it's great that there's so much stuff there. I think one problem is that I think it's, in terms of actual therapy, I think it's important that people get trained and they don't just think, oh, well, I have the experience, so I'm an expert with experience. Do you see what I mean? I think we need a look on the Lalich Center and Stephen Hassan. They both have courses for therapists. I do a different style of course. So there is stuff now. So it's a good thing. It's a really good thing. People need choices. They need to have really healthy, trustworthy options. And I can't remember your other questions.
Me neither, but it'll come back. So you don't take on personal clients anymore because you're training therapists, but people can find those therapists.
Just for the moment.
Through you. They can find through the affiliates that have been trained through you. And that could be worldwide, so they don't have to, because I know in America there's certain things about certain states and licenses, and like that doesn't apply here for this type of work.
No, it doesn't. We're insured to work internationally, and we've worked with people in America, and there's some training from America. So I've got people internationally training on the one based in the UK. So there's a couple of people coming in at 2 a.m. in the morning for the training.
That's crazy. One thing we used to do on our podcast, we've been doing it for 5 years now, over 300 episodes.
6 years.
6 years?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, 6 years. Okay. It's
That's
crazy.
incredible.
But we used to do this segment called What Chaps Your Ass, which is like what pisses you off. And it could be about the cult that you were in, or it could be about, something you see in the world now. So I'm going to ask, in the cult space, in the cult recovery space, does anything chap your ass? Did anything really bother you?
Let me just think for a minute. I think probably what I just said, that thinking because I'm a survivor of a cultic experience, I therefore can train as a therapist and just do the work. And I think you wouldn't have an eating disorder and then train as a therapist and think I can help people with eating disorders because I had an eating disorder. I mean, how is that? What sense does that make? It doesn't make sense to me. And I think, we need more training courses in this area. Well, I also think we all need to have a bit of humility about what we offer and, just that we offer what we offer and other people offer what they offer. Yeah. And, that's good. It's good to have those choices.
That's a very diplomatic way of pointing out some things in the space.
Yeah,
I love that about you, Gillie.
People are people no matter what. So
what?
So
what
people are
going
to be people no matter what space they're in. You're going to have the dynamics.
Exactly. Yeah, just because we all left cults doesn't mean we're not. It
also means we're not. It doesn't mean we're not susceptible again, too. So
exactly.
That's actually in the new book, Gillie, we say, don't put anybody on a pedestal, including us, and especially in the cult recovery. Just because someone's in the cult recovery space doesn't mean you should put them on a pedestal either.
I'm a sinner, so you
can't put Nippy because he sins. You can't trust him.
I sin.
Well, we've fully established that. I mean, the one thing I have fully established through this interview and this podcast is that you are a sinner.
I know
and you're projecting your sinfulness onto me.
Guilty. You should write a review. 1 star. Nippy's a sinner.
projecting.
Or 5-star. I don't mean, however you look at sinning. I don't,
Yeah, 5-star.
Okay, and the other question
Depends what you mean by it.
the other question that we ask sometimes, and sometimes I forget, but when you look back at like the ways of the cult and the things that you were trained to do and not do, was there something that you weren't allowed to do that you now enjoy? I mean, it's been a long time since you were in your cults, but like for example, for me with Nexium, we weren't allowed to rest, and when I do take a nap, I really relish it. Is there something like a guilty pleasure that you couldn't do that you now do joyfully?
So, as it was a long time ago, there was something which was our food was very much controlled, and food is so often controlled in a cult, which you'll know about. And they told me I was fat. They always thought that I should be on a diet and I needed to lose weight and that whole thing. Not quite in the same way as Nexium of having this sort of, well, I suppose, yeah, there was this sort of image. And so I was never allowed to eat what I really wanted to eat. So when I left, I before I joined, I loved toast and marmalade. Look, I'm an English girl. I love toast and marmalade and homemade marmalade especially. So when I left, I'd have toast and marmalade. And if it was me now, I'd be like, fuck you, I'm having toast and marmalade.
there's the sinner.
I don't have it now. Yeah, there's the sinner. But I said, actually, if I ever write my life story, I'll call it Toast and Marmalade. So
I love it.
You know, I mean, I'm over that now. But and my mother used to make homemade, you know, the English thing about marmalade.
This is another thing to add to my list of things that you and my dad need to talk about. He loves marmalade.
I rub marmalade on Sarah's back.
You do not. At least you said back. You guys...
That's because you're a sinner.
This is my sinning.
This is, I think that this...
Only
That's
sinners
right.
would
Guilty.
do that.
This episode should be called Marmalade and Sinners, or Sinners and Marmalade with Gillie Jenkinson. I don't know. I'll work on it. I'm workshopping it still.
Yeah. Wait.
Something
Is there
like
anything that we didn't ask you that you need to get off your chest? Anything that's like really important to you that you want to end with?
I think we did it all. Thank you.
We covered a lot.
We did it all.
We did a lot. Where can people find you? How do they get the book? Is it on Amazon? What do we need to know?
So the book is on Amazon. It's on Routledge. So it's published by the publisher Routledge, and they have copies on their website. You can compare the prices. You can also get the link through my website, which is www.hopevalleycounselling.com. In England, we have 2 L's in counselling.
Oh, that's confusing.
In America, you have 1 L. I know.
We're more
it really
efficient.
is. I don't know who thought of
efficient.
that.
I still get honor color because I'm Canadian, so we have the British with the U. So I get that wrong all the time.
It's efficiency.
Okay, yeah.
We'll come back to England. We were there for spring break, but it was a very quick tourist thing. But we need to come back and maybe we'll find a way to collaborate. Are you in London?
I'm not. I live in the Midlands in a national park in the Hope
you live in Hope
Valley,
Valley.
which is why my company's called
I
Hope
love it.
Valley. Yeah.
Well, we should.
You could come up and
We'd
visit
love
too.
to.
We'd love to do that.
We love it there. My brother's name is Devon because he was conceived
It would
in
be
Devon.
fun.
Yes.
TMI.
Really?
Yeah.
Too much
TMI.
information.
TMI.
But I do really
Even the sinner objects.
I know you've got some boundaries. I want to connect you with my dad. I will definitely be referring people to your workbook.
Thank you.
Yes,
I appreciate
and I already
it.
have it on my list of things to put into the second edition. So many things we missed. Got here Gillie's book. And when you read it, please do let us know if we missed any major concepts that you think are important.
Sure.
Because we're always going to be improving it.
No, I think you've got loads in there, you know, and I looked at the copy you sent me, and then I've got the hard copy today, and it's lovely, and I'll keep dipping into it, and I will definitely mention it because I think it's important. I'll tell my affiliates, the therapists I've trained are called affiliates, and my trainees, I'll tell them about it because, it's really good to have this as another resource. Thank you so much.
Thank you for the work you do and being one of the OGs from the start to keep this work going. And we're so happy to finally meet you.
And I'm a granny now.
Right.
I have a 5-month-old
Congratulations.
granddaughter. So I really am a gangster granny. And
That's awesome.
the best thing that's happened for ages.
Yes.
Just
You
such
really
a
do.
joy.
You really do remind me of. She's a much younger version, but of my granny. Partly the accent, and also just You'll see. I'll send you a picture.
Oh, that's great.
So thank you for your time,
Thank you.
Gillie. You're just such a
Lovely.
sweet person and a kind person, and I'm so happy
Thank
to meet you.
Thank you. Lovely to meet you too. And maybe we'll
I
meet
hope so.
again.
I'd
I
like
hope
that
so.
too.
I can't get to the San Diego
No, neither can we.
conference, sadly, because I can't travel too far.
Bye, Gillie. We'll be in touch.
Thanks.
All right, everybody. We hope that you enjoyed our conversation with Gillie. She really is a special person. We had some good laughs, and
Lots of wisdom.
yes, we hope that you enjoyed it as much as we did. Please, if you're a survivor and you want to do a workbook with or without a therapist, we highly recommend her workbook. We will be adding it to our resource list, and we'll see you next time on A Little Bit Culty.
Deuces.
Sinking down to the depths of the ocean, hanging on to the weight of my love. If I let go of it all, I could leave, but I know I won't.
We hope you're enjoying A Little Bit Culty. If so, please do show us some love. Drop a rating or leave a review. Hit subscribe on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen. And subscribe to our Patreon at patreon.com/alittlebitculty.
Even better, send this episode to someone who needs it. Maybe they're in a cult. Maybe they're just a little bit susceptible. Or maybe they just love a good story. Spread the word, spread the love. Thanks for listening, and see you next time.
A Little Bit Culty is a Trace 120 production.
Executive produced by Sarah Edmondson and Anthony Nippy Ames in collaboration with producer Will Rutherford at Citizens of Sound. Our co-creator is Jess Temple Tardy.
Our production coordinator is Leslie Dinsmore.
Writing by Sandra Namoto and social media marketing by Eric Swarzinski and Brooke Keene.
Our theme song, Cultivated, is by the artists John Bryant and Nigel Aslan.